It's time for We're Live, pal. Double G here with Andrew Zarian. And before we get into the wrestling stuff, Andrew's wearing a shirt that confused me when I saw the photo of it. And there's a story behind it. It is a shirt that says Bret Hart on it. And yet it is Howard Stern in the photo. What is the story behind this shirt?
So I've been asked this all day, okay? Because I wore it on Fightful today, and people are like, what the hell is this shirt about? Why? I don't understand it. So in 1999, WCW put out an action figure of Bret Hart.
Mm-hmm.
I sent the link to our producer. I'm not sure if he could get it up yet, but there it is.
Oh,
okay. That, for whatever reason, this caught fire as the Howard Stern action figure. All over the forums. Okay? My youngest brother would hold that up and think it was Howard Stern.
Wow.
Isn't that fantastic?
I think that figure has like abs in its pecs. Like it's
Robin. Hoo.
So
tell him, Fred.
We're both giant Howard Stern fans from back in the day. I am back on the serious train because I had to get a new car. But you're down on Howard because he is so different from what he was back in the day. But don't you? I mean, he still does really good interviews, but he's not the same.
He's still the greatest.
He's not the same.
Yeah,
he's not the same with the hijinks and stuff.
I really fell out of Stern after Artie Lang left. That was it for me. I was a big Artie fan, and once Artie left, it just wasn't the same. A lot of people say it's the wokeness of Howard. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I just think, he's a fat cat now. He's in the Hamptons. He's in Miami. He wants to hang out with Jennifer Aniston. He's not going to badmouth everybody anymore. People change. People get old. He's 70 years old, 70-something years old at this point.
Don't worry. This is not going to turn into the Howard Stern podcast. We're going to move on real quick. But the other thing is, what drove him when he was early in his radio career? Conquering markets drove him. He was trying to beat the competition in the markets, and that was like his reason for doing a lot of that stuff. He gets paid a lot of money to chill on Sirius, and they have two channels for him. Who is he competing against? He's not competing against anybody.
Yeah, listen. I would be doing nothing too if I was him, and I made hundreds of millions of dollars.
And being on vacation for half of the year, like that's the life, man.
That's the life. Incredible. And you know some of the issues I'm dealing with right now, and what a Garrett gets a lot of my random mid-afternoon rage texts where I'm just losing my mind over work. I'm 40 years old. This is the time I gotta, hustle for the next 10 years, and then hopefully I'll retire.
Yeah, you work hard, but also you have some really fun and passionate hobbies, and you love your family, so that makes up for it. But yeah, man, work is.
But also,
day job
wrestling
stuff isn't always easy.
The day job stuff, but everything connects to wrestling for me. People, my ability to have access to venues and certain people, and my consulting business has introduced me to a lot of key people that have told me a lot of key stuff. And we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for my insane, consulting business.
So we should talk about SummerSlam. Now it is we're 3 days away from it. So it's not like, we need to necessarily do a deep dive recap. Everyone has done that. But I am interested in some of the big things that came out of that show. Raw was Monday. There are still storylines that crowd was on fire for that show last night. I guess the first thing and the biggest money thing, the biggest event in WWE right now was Roman Reigns coming back at the end of that match with Cody and Solo. What were your thoughts about how he came back? Did it feel as important as you thought it would, based on what they've been doing? Was it a home run, the way that they did it?
It was exactly what I thought would happen. The entirety of that show was very interesting to see because, and I spoke about this today with Rich, because of what I do for a living, I have been able to take my own opinions out of the equation, right? I'm able to see, and listen, as a wrestling fan, and you too, I was a tape trader at 13 years old. You know, like I have a very different perspective of professional wrestling. Not that it's better than anybody else's perspective. I just have a very unique and different perspective. Most people that watch a WWE product or watch wrestling in general have never done that. They've never tape traded. They never would get a relative in Long Island to send them cassettes of John Arezzi's radio show. Okay? This is something that that was part of my life very early on. I had older cousins that were very into professional wrestling, and it introduced me to this weird world. Also, my father was a big pro wrestling fan. I have a very unique perspective, and that is why I do what I do. And the same with you, and the same with Dave, and the same with Brian and Sean. This show is a mainstream casual product, WWE. That is exactly what they are. They've transcended into everything Vince wanted it to become, sports entertainment, a mainstream show on a network, getting as many viewers as possibly can. My kids loved SummerSlam. Loved it. Everything about it. They loved it from beginning to end. I thought it was a very good show. Was it a great show for wrestling? No, probably not. It was good wrestling. It was really good wrestling. Was it the best wrestling out there? No, but they don't have to ever do that ever again. It's a much larger reach that they're trying to get, and it's a mainstream crossover. They have Jelly Roll opening the show. They have everything is angle based too. It was a fantastic. It was an A show for angles. It was a B show for wrestling, and that's fine. And that's not a bad thing. That's my perspective of this.
The thing that I find so interesting about this audience right now, and I'm not trying, I mean, in a sense, we're generalizing because they are so hot, and what they're actually doing is they're actually feeding the fan frenzy, because all WWE fans ever wanted was for things to make sense and for the show to be good and for them to not feel like what they were watching was like, you know, painful to get into. And there have been years upon years upon years where you would go into a big show and you would just be disappointed coming out of it. Like that was like WWE for a long time for me. Now, the fan base is so happy right now. What happens is it's now the flip side. WWE can put on, you know, whether or not, whatever you thought about that show. Someone asked me, or I tweeted something and I said, oh, it was like a C+ show to me. I love the Roman thing. It was like a B-.
Yeah.
But because the fan base is pretty generally happy with the product, even saying it was a B- was like a negative comment that I made. And this is funny because I won't even name the podcast, but a podcast that two actual college football reporters run, their Twitter account, I was basically retweeting their poll because they wanted to get feedback on what people thought about the show. And so I retweeted their poll. And my answer somehow made them believe that I am just not into WWE right now. I was like, wait. You guys are actually sports reporters. Like, you guys understand how to be unbiased and such. Why does my lower score than yours mean that, oh, I just don't like WWE? That was wild to me. But it's just the fan base is generally so happy with the product. And I have a lot of people reaching out to me during the shows and, you know, wondering what I thought about X, Y, and Z. Like, for instance, I'll mention something that a lot of people were into last night, which is the Bronson Reed thing with Seth Rollins. And as I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. Bronson Reed, this is his moment. Yeah. The crowd was into it. They're actually a little bit too into it because they wanted to see him continue splashing the babyface. Yeah. But at one point, I was like, wait a second here. Why is Seth rolling towards the corner? And why do we have all of these people in the ring who are just not actively rolling him outside of the ring? Like, that seems to be kind of like the way to get out of this thing. And so my mind goes there sometimes, where I think we talk about the magic act of wrestling, right? When I was a kid and Hulk Hogan got jumped by King Kong Bundy, he was attacked, but he also had the other bad guys holding his arms, so he couldn't get out of it. It was like 3 against 1. And in this scenario, you have Seth, the babyface, you have the big bad heel Bronson Reed, and you have like 20 WWE officials who are in the ring who theoretically should be helping Seth and instead they're not. They're just waving their hands in the air going like, no, don't jump. That kind of stuff to me, I think in another time frame when the fan base isn't happy with WWE, they may have thought that was kind of silly, like how I thought it was. But
I agree with you.
It worked. The crowd was wild. People are reaching out to me saying that it was awesome. And I mean, I like Bronson Reed a lot, so I hope that this means a push for him. But it's like those kind of things. And so here's what I wanted to ask you about, which is the CM Punk Drew McIntyre match. Before I even tell you what I thought, what did you think about the match? What did you think about the finish? And were you, I guess, did it fulfill what you were hoping to see out of those two guys?
I did not have an issue at all with the match. I thought it was a safe match. Punk looked good. He looked really good. He didn't look bad to me. They played it safe, obviously. But that bracelet, I get it, right? You're telling a story here. Why did you have to tell it 3 times? You told the same story 3 times. So he sees the bracelet, puts him in an anaconda vice. Puts him in the anaconda vice, sees the bracelet, okay? Loses it. You're going to beat this man. Why don't you just beat him and then take the bracelet off?
Yes.
Exactly what happened at the end for Drew. Okay? So then somehow you drop the bracelet. Seth, the referee, does exactly what he's supposed to do, and he picks the bracelet up and he puts it on. Referees do that all the time. And he's even saying it to Punk in the match. He's like, I just picked it up. It was on the floor. Worry about your match and I'll give it back to you. Worry about the match. Then he messes him up, right? Yeah, so he knocks out the ref. He loses, and what ends up happening? Drew takes the bracelet off of him and leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, right? But you could have done it once. You could have said it was one moment of weakness. It was a moment of weakness. He thought he could. It was, he just wasn't thinking. 3 times, you're a lunatic now. You're a 24-year veteran that now has been enchanted by this bracelet that apparently means everything to him, that a fan gave him. Okay? I don't know, man. It really distracted me out of this, and I get, is it gonna matter? No, it doesn't matter at all. In the long run, it doesn't matter. I posted it. I did the it was a take on the meme of Arrested Development where the mother says, "I don't care for Job, the oldest son."
Yeah.
Right? Nobody got it. And I wrote, "I don't care for that bracelet." And only one person, my buddy Kyle, got it, of course, but nobody else got it. And people are like, how would you feel if your wife's name and your dog's name was on that bracelet? And I would go, I would think I should beat this man and prove I'm better than him and then take the bracelet off of him.
Yeah. You said something that was, I think, right on the money, which is you were distracted. And that's where I was too, because what we were promised by both of these guys was that there was going to be carnage. And Seth even mentions it in the middle of the ring. He's yelling at Drew because Drew is like, how can that only be a 1 count? And Seth's like, brother, don't worry about me. You were telling everybody that you're going to kill this guy. And this guy's kicking out at 1. So this is a you problem, not a me problem. And I was like, oh, so they're even telling us that what we are getting is not what was promised by both of these guys, which is the carnage aspect. Now, I have people telling me, well, it's only stage 1 of the feud, and eventually they're going to build up to Hell in a Cell. And I'm like, no, I get it. I understand pro wrestling. But the problem is when you promise something and you only give it like 30%, then it feels like a little bit of a bait and switch. It feels like Vince McMahon's pro wrestling. That's what it felt like to me. So I know they want to extend this thing and you want to mix Seth in and you want to get, lots and lots of matches out of it. You want to get business out of it. I think that's smart. But at the same time, this has been a blood feud. And we add the bracelet aspect of it, and it just distracts you from what the bottom line is, which is these guys supposedly wanted to beat each other's asses so badly that they were stalking each other in arenas and jumping each other and blooding each other up. And yet it's this, this phony bracelet that is now the major piece of the storyline. It's not the world title, right? It's a bracelet. So that is, I think it was what it was supposed to be, which is a distraction. That was the perfect word. I went into it hoping for carnage, but I've been saying on all of the shows that we've been doing, I was telling Dave, like, the Seth thing just distracts everyone from what the conflict is supposed to be. And I understand why, but it doesn't mean that I have to be happy with it. I wanted to see, like, Drew and Punk, to me, could have been like the greatest story of the year, post WrestleMania. And it came
it didn't
a little
need
bit. It came a little down. Yeah, it was a little bit of a step down, and I was like, okay, something that I thought was like kind of an A+ is now, it's like an A-, it's a B+. We'll see what happens. It could get back up, but at that moment when I'm watching a match, I can't give excuses for them, which is what WWE gets from that fan base when the fan base is excited about the product. Is they excuse it for not being as good as they had hoped, and they go, "Oh, it's just going to be better."
That's great, next time. And that's great. That's showing that something that they're doing is working. I just kept thinking of, okay, listen, what's the I for whatever reason I'm thinking of that jacket feud with Bret Hart and Carl Ouellet, Carl Ouellet, right? Yeah. That the PCO. He stole his jacket, and Bret Hart was enraged that this man is wearing his jacket, and he took it. And Bret, in an interview, goes, "That was the dumbest thing. Who gives a shit? I'm rich. I could buy another jacket." And I just kept thinking of that, you know? Or, you know, but this is such WWE booking with the babyface. This is the same as Andre ripping the cross off of Hogan, or The Undertaker ripping it and then throwing it down, because it's too hot, because he's the devil. I hate props being used in this way. Like, even like when they steal the title, right? And they did that in AEW with Jay White last summer. He stole the world title.
Right.
There's nobody in the back saying like, "Hey, dude, that's not, you have to give that back."
Right. It's not yours.
That's not
either
yours.
Either you get fired or you give us the belt back. What do you want?
That's going to the next town. Put it in the box. I don't like, it didn't need a prop. And I get what they're doing. But again, you know what? You know who really gave a shit about that bracelet? My kids.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh my God. What heat that was on Drew, right? Again, perspective matters.
Oh, for sure.
The casual viewer, which is everybody, does not see the things that we see. They're not remembering Bret Hart's feud. They're not remembering anything. My kids were watching that entire show and they go, "Oh my God, what a terrible thing to do. His wife's name and dog's name is on there." And again, that's who exactly it's appealing to. Mm-hmm. When I wrote, "I don't give a crap about, I don't care for that bracelet," it was all teenagers tweeting me and arguing. I didn't engage because I looked at a profile. I'm like, "Oh, these are children." And I get it. And you know what? I'm wrong. I am wrong in this. My perspective is not what they're appealing to. They don't care about me. That's the reality of it.
I don't think you were there. I think you were there. Were you there when we were at an AEW show and Larry the Dog just runs, like, we were there early and Larry the Dog just runs down the aisle and CM Punk has to chase after him. He's like, "Sorry, guys."
Which show was this?
It was like an AEW. I want to say it was like maybe All Out. I don't think it was 21. It may have been 22.
22?
Yeah.
Probably was 22. Yeah, it was fine. And Punk looked great. He looked fine. He put on some size and he wrestled properly with that size.
He pointed that out.
He's a thick boy now. Listen, you go to the Fed, you gotta beef up. I enjoyed the show. Again, I enjoyed the show. The main event, it was fine. It was a good main event. It was angle heavy, and that's what they're doing. The main event was every major pay-per-view, big 4 pay-per-view main event. 5,000 things happening, 5,000 false finishes. Distractions this way, that way. It was what it was. And I didn't dislike it. I just didn't love it. And that's okay.
No, I think we're probably right on the same wavelength with the show. And also, some of this is it was just me and Dave on Saturday watching. No one else was joined us.
That's
We
nice.
usually get. Yeah, I just get to pick his brain pretty much all show
That's
long.
awesome. You know what?
Um,
I envy that. I actually, I've been there with Dave to watch wrestling with him. That one-on-one, that has to be fun for you.
yeah, it's fun, but it's also like,
Because it's like having
10,
Wikipedia next to you.
Yeah, 10 years ago, it would have been like, oh my gosh, like this is like, who gets to do this? And now like we're close, so I get to do it often. But when other people are around, I do lay out and let them get their nerdy questions in for him. But so basically what I was saying is I think if I had been watching with some of the fans who we were talking about who really like WWE right now, it would have probably been more fun for me. But I was kind of watching and going like, okay, like this didn't hit, this didn't hit. Oh, this was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Oh, this didn't hit. What do you think about Damian Priest as a top babyface coming out of the show? He gets screwed out of his title, and then on Raw, basically the entire Judgment Day, save Rhea, shows it was a great. This was such a great shot. So if you didn't watch Raw, Damian Priest is in the middle of the ring. He wants Finn. He wants to beat Finn up. Finn shows up on the big screen. He's doing his promo, and he basically says, I'm not the only one. And then the shot pulls back, and then the rest of the new heel Judgment Day kind of filter in. I thought that was amazing because then you saw Carlito, you saw JD, you saw Dom, you saw Liv, and I thought that was such a great shot. But that whole thing at the end was to kind of build up he and Rhea maybe as like this power team, which was cool. But I feel like Damian Priest is somebody who I think could get over at a high level. I just don't know if WWE will actually go all the way with him. I feel like he's great as a babyface, and also you have Jey Uso. You have Owens and Orton. There was a time in WWE lore where they couldn't get a babyface over to save their life. Now they almost have too many babyfaces who are over because the fans just want all of them to win, and all of them can't win because you need some heels going over too. So it's a nice problem to have. But thoughts on Dame Dalla Priest as a up and coming top babyface?
Yeah, I like Damian, man. He's a great and listen, him and Gunther, what a tremendous story this is, right? Both started out very, bottom of the barrel indies, and they worked their way up. I mean, this was really a career mode in the making. I'm biased towards Damian Priest. He's a New Yorker. I've seen him wrestle a million times in hole in the walls here over the last, until he made it big. The dude is fantastic. It just shows you if you put in the work and you work hard at it every day, you don't have to be the greatest of all time to become a great. And I love that I love that for him. I love that for Gunther. He's very likable. And everybody says that. He's a great heel, but he's very likable. And the crowd is seeing that. And I like the pairing of him and Rhea now. I'm into it. I'm actually very into that Judgment Day storyline. What's crazy is that it started off with Edge. This was Edge's group.
Oh yeah, I know. I was thinking as Damian Priest was getting jumped by the heel Judgment Day, I was like, wouldn't it have been amazing if Edge was still in WWE and makes that save? That would have been fun. But yeah, he is mending. He's on the mend right now.
Yeah.
Just last few thoughts, and we'll change gears a little bit because I wish we had a show last week, if only to talk about this Shane McMahon, Tony Khan stuff.
I love
but we'll
it.
talk about it. We'll talk about it a week later. Photogate. Gunther and Randy Orton looks to be the main event for the Bash in Berlin. This is, I believe, a play off of the King of the Ring match, where Orton, I think, he got his shoulder up or something. Is that main event worthy for a non-Big Four PLE for you?
I definitely think because of where it is. Randy has a huge international following. And Gunther is Austrian. It's a very smart match to put on in Germany. I very much like the match. Now, if this was anywhere else, this would be a good main event. It's Randy Orton. He's one of the greatest of all time. So they've told us, and Gunther is fantastic. I think it's gonna be a great match.
One more WWE adjacent thing, which is NXT. Their first 2 shows on the CW network, they're actually getting out of their building and they're going on the road. CM Punk is going to be in Chicago for the first show, and Randy Orton, is it St. Louis, I think, for the second show. Kind of an interesting idea to kick off that relationship. I was saying that, they should do dark matches with both of those guys against, the top NXT dudes. That would be fun for that crowd, that hometown crowd. What do you see? And I guess we're going to get an NXT versus Dynamite on one of those weeks, because Dynamite is going to get moved to Tuesday. Do you sense that being on the new network is going to change many things, or is this just kind of a 1 or a 2 off, like when they'd bring talent over when they wanted to increase ratings for a day or two? Like, what is your sense about where NXT is going?
I don't know. I mean, this is obviously temporary, right? Because they're not going to be able to sustain. Maybe they can. Maybe they can sustain traveling into smaller buildings and doing that. I don't know, but I would say that this is really smart to get it off with a bang. And even if you travel once a month and you do a show somewhere else, that's big. Or can you film, 2 weeks worth at a time?
Mm-hmm.
That's also big. Do they have to be live every week? There is options, but the presentation is going to matter for sure. NXT's on a roll right now, and especially when you have a guy like CM Punk there and a guy like Randy Orton, or you send a Cody and you send whoever, it's going to make a difference. And it's been much better. NXT, that 2.0 experiment really failed, but they did learn a lot on kind of pivoting a little bit, and they pivoted. It's a very good product.
Yeah, I do wonder, because the one thing about that product is they're going to cheer for everything you want them to cheer for, because they understand their role on that show. They know that as part of the crowd, they are also there to make that show better on TV because of the crowd response. And they're right in on everything, that crowd. And so when you do move that show, I don't imagine. I imagine we're still going to see a lot of those, a lot of the shows in that building. But when you do move it, you're not going to be able to manipulate it as easily. Yeah. So you're going to have to give them a really hot show. So I'm interested. NXT is a little bit lower on my priority list of the things that I have to watch, or that I have to make sure that I watch. But, there are some talents that I really enjoy, like Trick and the women's division. I love the women's division right now. I think that women's division is like so impressive with the young talent that they have. So it'll be interesting. Like, I'm interested to see what, because you watch Raw and you see all of the technological things that they're doing with camera shots, and the way, like, there was something with Priest and JD where it was kind of like a backstage interview, but it was a video package at the same time, edited with highlights of stuff that they were talking about. I was just like, man, this is just top-notch stuff. And you wonder how much of that stuff could you put on the C show? Could you do some of that stuff on NXT? That'll be cool to see. All right, let's talk about Shane and Tony Khan. I call it Photogate because Tony Khan, I don't remember where he said it, but he said that he and Shane were having this meeting and someone barged into the room, snapped a photo, and then I'm assuming just ran for their life. Like, what happened here? Okay. This photo that came out, what's going on?
So when did you see the photo before it came out? Because I saw it the night before.
I saw it when it came out.
Okay. The night before, I got a text.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told to swear on my hair that I will not talk to anybody about it. Okay, which the best. And they sent the photo. And listen, I did not do a forensic NCIS style extreme zoom in on this thing.
Did it come with the watermark?
CSI level. No, there was no watermark.
No watermark. You got it pre-watermark. See, that just shows.
Who put a watermark on it?
I think Wrestle Talk had a watermark on it.
Actually, I have it saved here. Let me just look before I lie. I have it right here. Last Tuesday night, right? No watermark.
Okay,
yeah,
so
no
yes,
watermark.
You got it pre-watermark.
So,
that's big stuff.
Okay, so I thought it was Nick Khan.
You thought it was the Nick and Tony?
And the person that sent it to me probably thought I'm an effing idiot. Because I'm like, I wonder what this means for business. You know, like I'm talking. I'm having a conversation. I'm like, what do you know more? And finally, they're like, who do you think that is? And I go, Nick. And he goes, no, it's Shane. Look at it. And I did one of these. And I'm like, oh, it is Shane. And he's holding a blue Expo marker. I was told how the photo was snapped. Okay. Because the first thing I said was, how the hell does anybody get this photo?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not gonna. I don't want to expose anybody, but the way that it was described to me was, it was a random person that happens to love wrestling that opened that door or walked by or whatever it was, you know. And he's like, I don't believe that story.
Yes.
Okay.
It's hard. It's a hard story to believe for sure.
I mean, let's assume it's at the airport. Let's assume it's a random person at the airport, right? So what are you doing? You walk by, you peek, you're like, that kind of looks like Tony Khan. That kind of looks like Shane McMahon. Let me walk back. Let me do this. And then they saw him take the photo, right?
Yeah.
Or her, whoever. I really don't know if it's a guy or girl. They're like kind of looking at the person.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say? He's like, is this room 506? No, sorry. Or let's say it's an employee that snapped the photo. And then what? They just sent it to Wrestle Talk and to Sean? Again, I'm not questioning their integrity whatsoever. Listen, I don't know what story they were told. You know, that's most likely what they were told as well. I have no clue. To me, you know, this is a great thing to want out there. And considering the fact that Shane McMahon gave a statement to Bubba on Busted Open After Dark.
Have you ever listened to that show before?
No, I haven't. I've gotten yelled at by Bubba too many times to listen to him yell at me on the radio.
It's on the, what is it, the Fight Nation channel on Sirius or whatever.
Yeah.
I hear it like when I'm scrolling through. And it's just wild to me to hear like essentially a pro wrestling podcast on the radio. But I didn't know. I know Denise does stuff with them, but I didn't know too much about that show. But I guess it is kind of like a thing, right? They're pretty popular.
They're very popular. It's a very good show. They do a tremendous job. Those guys, everybody on that show. Dave LaGreca, very hardworking. Same with Bubba. Same with all those guys. It's good to see it happen. You know, it's when I was a kid, if there was wrestling on the radio that it was accessible, I would have freaking loved it. I had Iata.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was the first time, and I had Mojo Radio out of Toronto that I would listen to live audio wrestling.
I had a random Big John Studd wrestling show where on air he said that he thought the Junkyard Dog was going to pin Ric Flair and win the NWA World Title. At that point, I should have known that Big John Studd's sources weren't fantastic because the JYD was fantastic. Over the hill at that point.
Does Dave think that photo was a happenstance or was it by design? Has he said anything publicly about it?
He's written about it. He said stuff on Wrestling Observer Radio. He wrote that he didn't believe that it was just happenstance that the photo came out because it was on a Wednesday. So that's Dynamite. Tony's trying to, create some hype for the show. And then for Shane. So the conversation that I had with Dave about Shane, I was like, okay, so is Shane trying to use AEW as leverage to get back into WWE? Like, that would make a lot of sense to me. It makes less sense to me for Shane to be interested in being in AEW because Tony runs the show. It's a one-man show. He owns all the shares. Like, it's his business. It's his company. So Shane is just going to be talent. Like, Shane's getting older, right? I don't imagine anybody really wants to see him outside. You do the one time and you do the, oh my gosh, there's a McMahon on AEW. You do it once, people are going to be excited, but what's the follow-up like? I can't imagine, that it's going to be worth the wear of bringing in Shane. But I thought,
excuse me.
Okay,
him and Okada, Continental Classic. Just for that, it's worth every penny. I want to see him and Okada.
this dude's just gonna get hurt, though. We saw the WrestleMania thing. All he did was leapfrog, and his leg just goes out completely. Like, it's just not anything we need to see again. But I guess what I was saying is I'm sure he still believes, WWE is his birthright. Like, he's on the outside of that company right now. I imagine he really desperately wants to be back in. So what would be one way to get back in? Well, let me see if I can leverage, AEW into getting back into WWE. It would make sense to me if that was kind of the goal, because I just don't see why he would want to be in AEW unless he had some sort of, role that he thought he should, he thought he's supposed to be running WWE right now, but he can't do that in AEW. This is Tony Khan's thing. It's not, he's not going to bring in Shane McMahon as like a part owner or a shareholder or something. It's just not what's going to happen.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be probably more storyline driven or like an X amount match commitment. You could do a nice introduction. He joins the Elite. He's part of them. They brought him in to mess with Tony. They've given him some sort of power. I don't know how they could do it. I don't hate it. Okay. I don't hate it. If it could be done well, I'm intrigued by it tremendously. I don't have this disdain towards Shane that many other people do. Is he a good wrestler? No. Is he a crash? Can he put on an entertaining match? Sure. I find it fascinating, the whole thing. And, Tony last year was trying to get a big name to show up at Wembley, right? Wasn't that the Goldberg conversation that was happening?
Yeah,
Wasn't that the rumor for the
Goldberg is not playing that Tony Khan game right now. He's so negative towards Tony. It's like, come on.
I don't know. Yeah. Well,
so what
to say. So
let's say that these negotiations are real. Let's say that Tony Khan does want to bring in Shane McMahon.
Yeah.
There is, I don't know what the percentage of the current audience is, but there is a percentage of the audience that is going to be absolutely turned off by a McMahon
for what
showing
reason?
up in AEW. Because the reason why they stopped watching WWE completely was because they were sick of the McMahons. And so if AEW is an alternative, there's going to be a segment of this current AEW audience. And I've seen some people make some claims about, if Shane shows up, I'm not watching anymore. It's too much of the thing that I dislike about WWE, coming into AEW. Now, some of this may be a testament to Tony Khan's trust with his audience, because if Tony Khan says, hey guys, trust me on this one, it's going to be good, some of that audience will be like, okay. And then all of a sudden we'll see some of these Twitter accounts just praising the hell out of it. But there is a percentage of AEW fans who are currently giving AEW the benefit of the doubt because they do not like what is, still what happens in WWE. It's too show business for them, or whatever it is, whatever the reason. And that could be a little bit of a turnoff for that audience. So that's, there's a test here. I don't know if it's worth.
Do you
trust
listen
value
to the minority following? I mean, listen, Collision did 189,000 viewers.
189,000 sickos, by the way. That's
sickos.
You can get the term right.
The number. You got to try something else. You got to try something.
But is this another hot shot, though? It seems like we've just got nothing but hot shot after hot shot.
But that's what they did. That's what the promotion has done from day one. They hot shot. Listen, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, Moxley. It was all hot shotting to get to
around work rate. You would have to change the identity of what you do well. And I'm not sure if they're good at that identity that you would have to change slightly for Shane McMahon to be involved.
Again, I'm not advocating that Shane is going to save them whatsoever, but
I'm always awesome,
open.
Right? For us,
I'm open.
This would be great. It would be amazing. We would have so many things to talk about. I am rooting for it for that reason. I'm just also wondering about, from the Tony Khan perspective, how it's going to work out.
I think from the Tony Khan, it really comes down to booking and positioning. I mean, if he's challenging for the world, and if you're putting titles on that guy, that's terrible. But if you're using him as some sort of catalyst to build feuds and build programs and extend it and to heighten it, I think that's a positive. He comes in. Let's say I'm just throwing. I don't know anything about the Shane stuff, but if he's going to wrestle somebody at All In, you know what? How about him and Jericho? What a dumpster match that would be for the FTW title, right? I'm just throwing it out there. I would. You don't think that building is going to lose it when Here Comes the Money plays?
I mean, they'll have to recreate that song, but
no, it's a Naughty by Nature song.
Here Comes the Money is not a Naughty by Nature song.
It's Naughty by Nature. Yeah.
You better do.
It's a Naughty by Nature song. Here Comes the Money, sung by Jim Johnson and Naughty by Nature.
Yeah, but Jim Johnson, though, wouldn't WWE own the copyright on that?
I don't know who owns the copyright.
Yeah, well, maybe Tony will have to go into the coffers and get him a song that would get the crowd fired up just the same.
Actually, it's Here Comes the Money lyrics. Universal Music Publishing. Universal owns the rights.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So he could just license it if he wanted to.
Yeah.
All right. So this will be an interesting thing to follow because Tony Khan mentioned it again today. He mentioned Shane again. So it's on the mind.
Oh, did he? I didn't see it.
Yeah. They're enjoying the praise here. Something else that he mentioned today was about David Zaslav meeting in Paris. I don't think there's any updates as far as the last time that we talked, other than can we just get this thing done? I'm sick of hearing about these meetings now. We're at the end here. Can we just, I don't want to hear Tony talk about it anymore until it's done. Is kind of the thing, but I want to see them get the deal. It's going to be great if they get the deal, the deal that makes them profitable. I know there are naysayers who want to see them fail. Absolutely 100%. That is not me. I want to see them get the deal. I want to see them continue because you WWE fans, without AEW, they could always fall back into what they were before AEW came. So you want that competition. So much so that people still leak these fast national numbers, which is just insane to me. Why do you listen? When the Rampage and Collision numbers are already so low, what does it matter about the fast nationals at this point?
Yeah, I got fooled twice, and you know what? I never got fooled a third. And I don't post those numbers. I get them all the time. I don't post them.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to me.
What did George Bush say? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me second time. A fooled man can't be fooled a third. Whatever the hell he said.
All right, we got 15 minutes left. Couple of other things. Lucha Bros and WWE. What do you think about that story?
I would not be surprised to see them there, and I actually think they would do well. I think for Penta would do tremendous there. He's such a unique looking act. I think that's a good move. Listen, they've done everything. that they possibly could in AEW. They won the tag
think
titles.
so.
They've had every freaking match. He's wrestled everybody in Penta wrestled CM Punk, Kenny Omega, John Moxley. I mean, he's had every possible match you could imagine. Well, you know what? Time to go somewhere else and try something new. And I'd love to see what a WWE version of those two could do. I think for Rey Fenix, there is a tremendous upside, especially with the audience growing. He's a great wrestler. They've always been looking for the Hispanic, the next Rey Mysterio, that big Hispanic star. He may not be it, but you know what? He surely could fill in a lot of blanks, and the same thing goes for Penta. I know that there's questions regarding, how well do they speak English, but, they could get around it.
You know who will be very excited for Penta to come to WWE? That is one George Kittle, 49ers tight end. That is his favorite wrestler, so much so that a couple years ago when the Niners played in Mexico City, Penta was there, and they were, hanging out. So George Kittle,
I didn't know that.
WWE
that's pretty cool.
Loves Penta. He'll be so excited. I think it's for them, because a lot of people are questioning their decision about, because historically WWE's track record with certain styles of wrestlers isn't great. It will allow them to maybe slow down a little bit, especially Phoenix, because he does a lot and gets hurt a lot. So they would have to change their style a little bit, though they could build to crazy hot spots, that will definitely get over. I think it's probably if the money, I would even say if the money is similar, I would choose WWE if I were them, just because if they are curious, they can scratch that itch. And then if they're still wrestling in 5 years, if they still want to compete in 5 years, they could always come back to AEW if they want. So
Penta's 40 now, right? I think he's 40 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. And who knows if he wants to, I don't know what these guys' bodies are like or, what they feel about it. But I just think if you have the scratch there, it's there for the taking. You're probably not going to have this opportunity again, or you may not. And AEW can always be a fallback plan, but I would really see if I can kick the tires on WWE if I were them.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really smart move, especially for Phoenix, because Rey Fenix is a couple years younger than his brother, right? Let's see how old Rey
he's got to be.
is.
He's got to be. I think we also got a super chat in there.
Oh, what do we have? Lucha Bros
Yes,
really leaving? No chance they stay.
We're just talking about it. I don't think that there's no chance. The thing, and this goes back to why everyone should want AEW to succeed. The leverage that the wrestlers have when there are two companies is really
way more
something that exists that won't exist if we don't have AEW. If Tony Khan was like, I do not want to lose you guys, and he bumps up his offer, then they may take it. This is not a WWE, they're completely done. I don't think, at least I haven't heard it that way. But I think I think they're probably or likely heading there. But negotiations can always change at the last minute, depending on we see this happen in other sports all the time. So
yeah, it's fascinating stuff. But here's a question: Who from the WWE side is heading over?
Shane McMahon. We just said. No, I'm just kidding.
And Ricochet.
Well, Ricochet. Yeah, Ricochet. We'll see. We'll see him. Yeah, that's the interesting one. I wish I knew. I mean, we thought maybe there was a chance that Natty could come over, but it seems like she's back with WWE. Chad Gable was coming up, and he stuck around, and he's got his new crew, and they're losing to the Wyatt Sicks. By the way, what did you think of the Wyatt Sicks' first match?
I'm giving it more time. I know that, my kids, first of all, they love it, right? They love the spooky stuff, and it's fantastic. And I enjoy it too. It's good stuff. I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm very curious to see how this evolves, because eventually they're going to become normal people and not become, monsters from the deep. That's what eventually happens. They can't, you can't sustain this in every time they come out. They do something spooky and then they leave. They're going to be in programs and they're going to be in matches and people are going to get the upper hand on them. So I'm giving it more time. I don't know how this will play out. Listen, the Brace stuff was very unique. At times it was terrible. At times it was really, really good. I don't know how it'll be presented now.
There are two of these guys in this group, being Joe Gacy and Dexter Lumis. I actively dislike watching them on television. So this new coat of paint on them, does it change? Not really. It doesn't really change it for me. I don't like the act that much, but I would be an idiot to say that it's not working, right? For at least for right now. The fans go nuts for this thing.
You know what I was thinking about? Okay. If this is us today, right? We're doing the show today. And WWE debuts a guy named The Undertaker. Exactly what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What would the 40-year-old version of us think of The Undertaker showing up?
Is he the same booger red, Mark Callis, mean Mark that we sort of saw through the ranks? I think we would understand, because that's why I was open to The Undertaker early on, is because I was like, oh, that's mean Mark. And now he's
not me.
Yeah.
Not me,
so,
because I'm younger than you.
Right. So I would definitely give it a chance, especially because the young Undertaker was doing stuff that nobody else was doing as a big man, because he's like flying over the top rope and I was not really ever a fan of the Earn stuff and the Paul Bearer stuff. But as an athlete and as a wrestler who I saw as a younger wrestler, I was definitely into The Undertaker in the beginning for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think age plays a part in your perception, and right now WWE's trying to get a new generation of viewership. They know how important it is to constantly evolve and not do it the way that Vince did it by going totally PG and having the Muppets on.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
Again, it's an old man commanding, like a very old man commanding what young people like. Oh, let's get the Muppets. Let's get Pee Wee Herman. That's funny. Pee Wee Herman.
Jerry
Springer.
Do you remember when they did the thing with the Muppets and it was Bunsen and Beaker? I was writing Raw recaps for my blog back then, and I wrote something about how Beaker was related to Sheamus, like as a joke, and then they kind of did play it off at some point. I was referenced in Wikipedia for that joke. I was like, of all the things to be referenced in Wikipedia is Beaker and Sheamus. But that's where the product was, right?
I hated that product.
The thing about it, if you're a sports fan and you're really connected to your team, you also like to see the young players, who's going to replace, who's going to come up. Like, I do a Giants podcast and we're always talking about the farm system. I sort of, when I look at the NXT stuff, I kind of look at it the same way. Like I look at Roxanne Perez and even, Thea Hale, that had a really fun match. And you go, wow, these women are young and they're already really, really good. So the only reason they're in NXT right now is A, because they need they're just going to get more reps. And B, the main roster has their folks and, they would have to sort of decide who to pull back or who to change, or because you only have so many spots that you can put on television, or else people just end up hanging out and catering all day long. And so when you look at it that way, like I definitely, even though, I'm a little bit older than I was, a lot older than I was, back in 1990, when Undertaker came into WWE, I still sort of look at it in the same way, because I put that sort of sports lens on it. Like, who's young, who could, some of these women that are in NXT, there's like 6 or 7 of them who are really good and really young. There's not going to be room for every single one of them. So their NXT experience right now is kind of like also being on Tony Khan's radar, because there's going to be only so few who actually do make it to the main roster. And then AEW might grab a couple of those. That's where I would like to see, the idea for the talent exchanges and stuff. Like, let's bring some of these young people over who are actually really killing it on both sides.
Yeah, they've done a tremendous job. They have an amazing crop of young, really good talent that's coming up, and that's the future, and they're connecting with a younger audience.
Did we
we got another two? Yeah, we got 2 more super chats.
All right, go for it.
Let's see. Oh, it's for you, Garrett. For MVP question, you think AEW deal will be announced before or after Wembley contract coming up? Bobby Lashley going to AEW. My opinion.
That's interesting. The Bobby Lashley thing.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And then he had a follow-up here that we could put up too. There we go. Haven't super chat in a while. I'm currently deployed. Great show, guys. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Eddie.
Shout out to Eddie, because Eddie is also in the Wrestling Observer chats and doing super chats and stuff as well. So, yeah, good. Hope everything is doing well with you, Eddie.
Yeah.
So, as far as the timing,
service,
yeah, absolutely. As far as the timing of this, I guess I would actually lean more towards what you think about the timing pre or post Wembley, because we're getting really close. Wembley is like 19 days away at this point. I think it'd be awesome to be able to just for them to do it on, before All In. It's just a giant weekend celebration of nothing but great news, and then they can go out and put on a great show. But I don't understand the whole timing of this stuff. It may not be done exactly by then. Like, I really watched the NBA deal very, very closely, and it was sort of the same thing where it's kind of rumored, but you knew so many things about that deal before it was official because of the reporting. And it's just, it's a much bigger story when you have 3 partners. There's more information out there. For this one, it's just Tony and WBD. So I can't tell, like, when Tony says, like, we're in the red zone, that's not the 1 yard line. He hasn't said they're at the 1 yard line yet. He's saying that they're close, but they're not that close. I can't gauge what he really means, because everything is great to him. And that's his comment. Yeah. Everything is great. Our relationship is great. We're going to get a great deal. And to me, whenever I hear that, I'm like, if everything is great, nothing is great. But I do sense that he is confident, because, and here's, maybe I'm giving too much credit to this one. But remember when Bischoff and John Alba's show got canceled for whatever reason? I don't even remember what the reason was. But you remember that when that happened?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
So poor John Alba posts about the show.
He got dragged into it.
Tony Khan replies to John Alba as if John Alba is Eric Bischoff, and Tony's kind of crowing about it. But when Tony says stuff like, my naysayer Eric Bischoff is going to have to eat crow, I think that sort of means something, a little bit more.
Of course.
Because he's really trying to prove these haters wrong. That's really important to him. So I feel like it's coming sooner than later. But at the same time, there's nothing that he actively says that leads me to believe a timeline or a time frame that it is coming. So that, that's the part where I'm unsure. I've even tried to get some of those NBA reporters to sniff around the AEW deal, and they, they're not really reporting on it yet. So
I think a lot of the conversation we're not hearing, right? By the way, the judge denied Vince's motion to prevent Janelle Grant from petitioning for
the doctor
Peak Wellness, the doctor records. Yeah, so I just saw that come up. There's a number of things here, right? One would be, somebody would have heard something if Tony was speaking to another network right now. Okay? I think that a preliminary something would have come out.
Yeah.
Because they're not, a lot of the conversation stopped. I mean, you remember, I was getting updates on certain parts of this deal up until, I want to say, January, February, during the holidays, because that's when they brought in a separate somebody from the outside to negotiate the deal.
Right.
So it all stopped there. You're signing NDAs. Once the deal gets closer. Nobody's going to talk. Nobody wants to risk anything, and that's the way it should be. That's one thing. The other thing is Tony mentioning being open to AEW branded Ring of Honor was very interesting to me. Right? That was one aspect that was very interesting because I know that those were discussions that had happened before, and they wanted to keep the integrity of Ring of Honor as just Ring of Honor. Now he's a little bit more open to it. So again, it can mean nothing, but to me, it probably means something. The other thing was when I spoke to people there and on both sides, and they both told me Tony is very interested in the concept of simulcasting, much like how the NBA is simulcasted on Max. That was another piece. That wasn't said. Listen, we all know how this works, right? Sometimes someone says something to you with the hopes that you put it out there, right? This was not said in that way. It wasn't like, hey, get this, because I think this was said in like, oh, no, this is a conversation that's happening. There's numerous ones, right? And then the red line, whatever he said, the 20-yard line, the 10-yard line, whatever that is, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of the fine details here. It being on Max in France when everybody in the sports business world is in France is also very telling. That is not by happenstance that it went live the week that it did. If it was, I would say that, man, that's a very lucky moment.
Yeah,
these are all pieces that is playing a part in this. I'll tell you something off the air. Since we're running out of time, and I don't feel comfortable bringing it up, but I was told something else today when I spoke to somebody. I have no way of verifying it, so I won't talk about it until I can a second verification. I reached out to a couple people. Tomorrow I'm going to see people, so maybe I'll have something tomorrow. But there are things moving, things are changing, and it's a matter of, listen, we got to wait and see. There's nobody really does this in any other sport. You know, the NBA rights are happening. People aren't arguing for the demise of the NBA. I mean,
the NBA's deal is bigger than the NFL's deal. The NFL feels some sort of way about that.
Yeah. And it should be bigger because it's more games. Maybe the NFL should go to an 18, 20 game season then.
They're going to go to 18. Absolutely.
They've been talking 18 for a while, but they're not going to add more. They're just going to take away 2 preseason games, right? They're going to start it early.
So the problem is that the real players don't play in the preseason anyways. So
yeah,
that doesn't mean anything on the wear and tear of the athletes' bodies. But we're going to get 18. There's too much possibility for inventory, especially with Netflix and all that coming out. So.
All right, these are all very. I love the business. I know you do too. You love the just outside of wrestling too. Just the sports business side of things is so fascinating because it moves so fast. It's very.
If this side of wrestling didn't exist, I would have fallen out as a wrestling fan in 1995.
I get that.
I would have probably came back in '98 with Austin because that was just too cool. But I would have fallen out of favor if it was just about what I was watching every day and whether or not I liked it. Because in many, many years, more so, WWE was often more bad than it was good, and I would have just fallen out. But reading The Observer kind of changed it for me. Finding some inside stuff previous to The Observer, and then like you, listening to that Ayata show, and then subscribing to The Observer, and then F4W, like that kept me in the game. And I was just telling somebody, I think Brian's website, I want to say next year is like the 20th anniversary of F4W. How crazy is that?
Well, I mean, the Wrestling Observer really changed my view of professional wrestling. And finding that radio show, finding actually Jeff Merrick and Dan the Mouth Lebransky somewhere on a forum linking to their website, and they would put archives on the Live Audio Wrestling website. That's the first time I heard Dave Meltzer speak. I've been an Observer subscriber because of people that would hand me the Observer, but and I was a kid, I was reading it, but the first time hearing Dave talk about it and have Brian talk about it, and you're talking 1999. Right? Let's say 2000. That's 24 years ago. I discovered, and it changed the entire trajectory of my career in broadcast. You know, I love broadcasting because of that. I love professional wrestling. I've made it into this thing. But 20-year history of F4W. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yep. All right. We will be back at some point. For Andrew, I am Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.